I need to tell you something that's been on my mind for the past week. This is my GTX 980. I found it in my closet in an anti-static bag like a forgotten dusty letter. And when I installed it today and booted up those old games, it felt like unearthing a sensation from a simpler time. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey that's going to hurt in all the right ways. We're going to remember what it felt like when the GTX 980 was everything. We're going to watch it explore new games for the first time, games it was never meant to see. We're going to explore what it means to love old tech that the world is forgotten. And by the end, you're going to understand that sometimes the most important metric isn't frames per second, but smiles per dollar. September 18th, 2014. NVIDIA releases the GTX 980. And for those of us who were there, it wasn't just a product launch. It was the moment we realized what PC gaming could become. The flagship was based off of the brand new Maxwell architecture. At the time, TSMC, the silicon wafer manufacturer for NVIDIA, was having a hard time with their new 14nm process node, so NVIDIA had to focus on creating something special. Maxwell had to be different to be good. It couldn't just rely on faster clocks and more cores. Maxwell was more efficient, faster, and used less power than Kepler, the previous generation, with 2048 cores, a base clock of 1125 MHz, 4 GB of GDDR5, a 256-bit bus, and a mere 165-watt TDP. This card was efficient and sleek. Tomb Raider 1080p Ultra, 158 FPS. Metro Last Light 1080p Ultra, 51. Benchmark after benchmark, this GPU showed one thing. It was a new era of PC gaming, but it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the confidence. You didn't need to research before buying games. You didn't need to check the minimum requirements. You just played whatever looked fun, and you knew it would work. The GTX 980 gave us permission to dream without limits, to build without fear, and gave you permission to game without compromise. And for 2 beautiful years from 2014 to 2016, we lived in that permission. But here's what made the GTX 980 truly special. It didn't just run games, it built a culture. Let me take you back to that world. This was the card of the early streaming revolution, when OBS was still new, when going live felt like magic, and when getting 100 viewers made you feel famous. NVIDIA's Shadowplay made you a content creator before you even knew what that meant. This was also the last of an age where LAN parties still existed, when people still hauled full towers to each other's houses, when setting up 8 gaming stations felt like orchestrating a symphony, when can you run this was never a question because you had a 980. And I want to know how many of you met your gaming friends during the GTX 980 era. Drop a comment with the game that introduced you to your crew, because this card and cards like it didn't just render frames, they rendered friendships. The GTX 980 was one of the last graphics cards of an innocent age. Before ray tracing, before DLSS, before frame generation, and before $1,200 flagships. When graphics cards just made games pretty and fast. And that was enough. This is the part that hurts. This is where we watch our hero try and keep up with a world that's moved on without them. In Fortnite 1080p low settings, we watched it struggle to hit a 59 FPS average. Although perfectly playable, you might expect a bit more from it, as older flagships like the R9 290X outperformed it handily. But with the lows never dipping below 30, it's still a smooth experience, especially for what it is now. A budget GPU. Forza Horizon 5 1080p medium settings was playable as well. Again, the 980's peers are outperforming it, but with a 60 plus FPS average and the lows never dropping below 40, it's a smooth experience. Ready or Not 1080p medium settings was an acceptable performance as well. The card got a pretty darn good 81 FPS on average, with the lows not dipping below 44. You can indeed game on some newer titles with this GPU. So let's take it to the next level with our next game. Helldivers 2 at 1080p low performed alright. With a 34 FPS average and the lows not dipping below 28, this GPU is on par, if not a hair better, than the R9 290X. But it's clear the lack of VRAM is holding it back, as the R9 390 walked past it with a 26% higher average frame rate. That being said, the 980 felt smooth enough for a new or low-end gamer. Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2 1080p low was a shining beacon of what this GPU can still deliver. As a very demanding game, this card handled it well. With a 41 FPS on average, it would never drop below a 30 FPS VSync. It was also incredibly smooth, with the lows rarely dropping below that 30 FPS mark. Now it's time to humble it. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 1080p low settings. This card that once commanded respect now scrapes 33 FPS together in this title. The lows dropped below 30 frequently enough to make it noticeable. Combat was sluggish and clunky, as that's when the frames decided to drop most. But here's the thing. The GTX 980 isn't failing modern games. Modern games are failing the GTX 980. Optimization seems to be a thing of the past. On low settings, a game like Kingdom Come 2 or Space Marines 2 doesn't really even look very good in comparison to a game like Star Wars Battlefront. At ultra settings 2K, the GTX 980 can nearly double the average frame rate of those games while looking markedly better. So this GPU can still game, just temper your expectation with newer games. Older games though? Bring it on! Do you know what's sad about the GTX 980? It doesn't even know it's been forgotten. I checked the Steam hardware survey, the GTX 980 doesn't even register anymore. Less than 0.1% of users still use the 980. This card that once dominated enthusiast builds, that graced thousands of YouTubers' gaming rigs, that enabled millions of gaming memories, it's now statistically extinct. So why am I even making a video about a card that nobody uses anymore? It's like a band at a bar playing an encore even though everybody else has already gone home. Well, it's still here. It's on the marketplace, on eBay, and here, spinning its fans, still outputting 1080p 60 to anyone willing to meet it halfway. Sure, you could say this card is outdated, but that's like saying summer nights don't matter once fall comes. That's like saying memories have an expiration date. This GPU represents a moment when you were chasing dreams, not benchmarks, when your PC felt like a place, not a spec sheet. And that's why I need you to tell me. Tell me your GTX 980 story, if you have one, or your favorite GPU story. The game that made you fall in love with PC gaming, the moment in time when 4GB of VRAM felt infinite because someone needs to remember. Every abandoned graphics card in every closet is a monument to the games we used to play, the dreams we used to have, and the version of ourselves we used to be. Testing the GTX 980 in 2025 made me question everything I thought I knew about progress. We measure technological advancements in ray tracing cores and AI acceleration and frame generation in features that most games don't use and most gamers don't really care about. What about simplicity? What about the joys of something that just works? The GTX 980 represents one of the last eras when graphics cards had heart, when they weren't trying to be everything to everyone, when they just made games beautiful, and let that be enough. Some reviewers use RTX 5090s and RX 9070 XTs for reviews, cards with easily 10 times the power and 100 times the complexity, but sitting here with the GTX 980 playing Forza Horizons at a crisp 60, I remember what satisfaction actually feels like. So what do we do with a graphics card that's still good enough, but not actually good enough? What do we do with hardware that works, but some say doesn't matter? The GTX 980 has found its purpose as a time machine, a portal back in time when gaming felt simpler, when choices felt clearer, when fun didn't require a PhD for the settings menu. If you still have yours, dig it up. Don't retire it. Repurpose it. Build a retro gaming station. Give it to your younger brother or niece or nephew so they can have their first gaming PC. Turn it into a monument to better times. This card has taught us that cutting edge doesn't last, but the memories we make with them can last forever. It showed us that sometimes the most important benchmark isn't how fast something runs, it's how it makes us feel. If this video made you remember your old GPU, if it brought back memories you thought you'd forgotten, if it made you want to dig up your old hardware and give it one last dance, share it. Share your story, share your screenshots, join our Discord so we can hear your story. Drop a like if you like this kind of content, and share this video with your friends. I know we're a small community here on Socket Sanctuary, but the gaming community is always better when we're together. The GTX 980 may not show up on hardware surveys anymore, but it lives on in every late-night gaming session it enabled, every friendship it facilitated, every dream it made possible. This wasn't just a graphics card, this was a season in our lives. And seasons may end, but they teach us to appreciate what comes next.